Today I'm going to teach you a couple of tips and tricks for Slipways. Now I really want to keep this video short. I don't want this to be something that's an hour long that goes into every aspect of the game. So just to be clear, I'm going to assume that you have gone through the learn to play section within this game and only focus on some of the more important things that is maybe less obvious when you're starting out, or even if you've played the game a bit, you may not know some of these. And it's really just going to be a couple of tips that's going to make it easier for you to get high scores in the game. Now, before we get into it, just one bonus tip. If you haven't seen this in the past, there's this stable probe setting, which basically removes the little mini game where the probe size sort of pulsates and gets bigger and smaller. That just feels like a bit of random busy work in a game like this, which is mostly about planning. So I prefer to have it enabled. I would recommend that unless you like that kind of thing. So we're just going to set up a standard run here on the reasonable difficulty level, which is probably where you'd start out. I don't think it's necessary to start out in forgiving. The game is fine on reasonable. It might be difficult for you to get the higher scores initially, but it's not so challenging that it makes it very difficult just to set up a standard sort of galaxy with the colonies and everything. In terms of the specific races that I select to be on the council, it doesn't matter that much. I tend to randomize it. I think the game is more interesting that way. The only thing I will say is that when you're choosing perks, on the reasonable difficulty, it isn't actually that hard to get money. And especially later on in the game, it really isn't an issue. So I would avoid taking perks that focus on credits. We can rather look at things that give you options to create basically different types of worlds that you wouldn't be able to set up otherwise. This one, let's just see what else we've got here. So this one gives us more trade income. It also gives us another main product, and that is useful. But the trade income, maybe not that important. This one gives us three builds of slip relay structures. That is useful. So we're going to take that one, and we'll also take this one. Sorry, let's just select these two, and we'll get into the game. Now, the first thing I want to say is that you should either be probing or you should be planning, but don't do both at the same time. And the reason I say that is whenever the game reveals new information to you, so if I do this, for example, I can't undo that action. And that makes perfect sense because, of course, you know, it would make the game too easy if you could just do this and then undo and probe a different area. But once you're done doing this, then you can basically just plan out to your heart's content and you can undo anything. As there are two actions that you can take that's not going to enable you to undo whatever you've just built. One is going to these ruins because, again, that reveals information you didn't know before. And the other would be just doing the probes. But aside from that, I can just, you know, go ahead and set stuff up here, and it doesn't really matter if that makes any sense. I can just undo these as long as I, you know, don't release probes again. So with that out of the way, what you're usually going to do initially is just find a little stable ecosystem that you can set up that doesn't have any struggling planets. Struggling planets are a huge drain on your just the game in general, the score that you're going to get eventually. So you want to try and avoid that at all costs. There are some limited circumstances in which you can do it, but generally you don't want to. You're always going to start out by having at least one planet that's going to have a colony. So, I mean, we can look at some options here. Like this one would only require food, and to get food, we can get it from this planet, which would then need in turn organics. Let's just see if we can get that. We can actually get that from over here. So already we have a nice little ecosystem, or self-sustaining ecosystem at least, that we can start here. So if we have the colony over here, we can get the food from here, and then of course they can send colonists over here to get the organics. Now this brings me on to the next point, and this is the single most important thing that I can tell you, and it's going to make the biggest difference in terms of the score that you're going to get. So every planet is going to have these basic needs, right? And if you don't meet them, the planet could be struggling. But what's even more important than this is these planets, as soon as you stabilize them, will get secondary needs. Now, you don't need to take care of these secondary needs, but I would highly recommend that you do if it's reasonable for you to do that. The biggest mistake I made when I started playing is I kept building out instead of taking care of all of these secondary needs of my planets first. And if you want to have a good score, you don't want to be doing that. You want to focus on taking care of as many trade routes as you possibly can within these planets that you're starting out with, and then expanding. And you keep doing that basically. You expand and you look at how can you optimize everything that you have currently within this little set of planets that you're playing with now. You're going to get much better sort of planet upgrades doing that and a much better score overall. Now, as part of that, one of the things that I didn't realize is initially, and this was really just me being daft and not reading all of the tooltips, but I sort of thought that these resources that you have to get, the secondary resources, are random, but they're not. They're fixed, and you can actually see what they are. So, simple example, colonies are always going to want goods for the secondary resource. I don't think there's any exception to that. So already, this is something else that we can look at in terms of where we're placing this colony. I don't see any easy options to get goods to this colony, and this may be a reason for us to not build this little ecosystem that I have set up here, and instead build it over here where potentially I can get some goods to it. We'll need to see if this is actually a viable option, and it's looking like it may be a viable option. Let's check this out actually. But this is a really important point. Before I do that, I want to show you one other thing. You can actually just look at this, and this is why I was saying I was looking at the tooltips, because I can see here already that level 2 and level 3 is going to require goods, and you can do this for all of these planets. So this one we can see it doesn't need anything else for the other levels. We're probably just going to have to establish more trade routes. And then this one, we can see that level 2 and 3 requires water. So again, you know, we can have a look here and we can see, okay, we can actually get water from this planet, and that will require some robots to be sent over there. We can get the robots from here, but it's going to be maybe an issue right now for us to get people over to this planet. Let's see if there's another way of setting this up. So because we know we would be able to get goods over here, we may want to start the colony here. They'll need to get food, which they'll likely need to get. Well, we can actually get it. This could work quite well because they can produce the robots over here. That'll allow us to get the food via this planet, and then they can just send people over here to get the organics. And then we're sorted. So let's do this. Okay, get the robots. They'll produce the food. This comes back here. And of course, we sort out this one. And now we have this nice self-sustained little ecosystem. Let me just quickly click on these tasks. Very quick tip on this one. You can decide what seems reasonable to you. I mean, if I'm looking at this, science is always going to be a priority for me, and you know, I always create more colonies as well, so this should be easy to get. These council tasks, it is worth going out of your way to get them. Note that these points that you get, these blue ones that you see at the end here, this has a pretty big impact on your score as well. So I also like this because, you know, it gives you something outside of the regular way that you play to sort of pursue as you're playing. You can look at what you need to do for these guys up here. But anyway, as I said, you can see that we now have this need for goods over here, which we will just take care of. So basically, we're going to need to send these guys over here to get the minerals. That'll be converted into goods. And now this planet is already basically upgraded to successful. And we're not too deep into the game, like a year and a half. Sometimes you can get it done easier than this, but we actually have a pretty good setup here. And this gives us lots of options in terms of where we're going to go from here. Now, there's one last thing that I want to talk about, which is research. And I'm just trying to have a look here to see if there's an easy way for me to make the point that I want to make here. There may be. I can actually see, but I'm not going to have enough people. That's the problem. Can I get more colonists from somewhere? Do I have any easy options here? It doesn't look like it, but I'm going to show you what I mean in terms of the research anyway. So the research is one of those things where every time I get to a situation like this where I can decide now, okay, I've done all of my planning, I'm probably going to start probing again and look at all of these other planets before I plan out the next section of planets. I also look for, is there a good opportunity for me to build a nice, efficient research base? And we still have these slip relays as well. Now that I think about it, that might solve the research problem, but I don't want to get into that right now. So I'm going to build a research base here just to show you what I'm talking about. Now, a research base can only accept one type of resource, so we can put this resource in here, and then of course you need colonists, and that's what makes it work. But what's important is how you can level it up, and generally if you are going to build these, you're going to want to at least level it up once. So you can do that in one of two ways. Second prize is kind of if you can send more colonists to it. So let's say I set this up and there's another colony and you can send another colonist from there. That'll give you another 1 research point every year. But if you can get another one of that resource, and this is important, you can't send a different resource, you have to send the same one. So if I had another planet in the vicinity that was producing organics and that could reach this research station, that's ideal. And those are really the situations that you want to watch for. You want to watch for situations where you have 2 of the same resource that's going to be able to access that, and you have a planet of a colonist. And that's going to be a pretty efficient research setup. And you want to start doing that as early in the game as possible. So don't worry too much. You know, of course, building a research station, it's going to lock off other options for you, because it basically means that I don't have these colonists, so I can't do anything with this planet. In this case, it may not be worth it because this is not the most efficient setup. But if I had another planet over here that could send organics over here as well, I would pay that price. I would basically say it's okay, I can do something else with this planet, or I can figure something else out, because research in this game is incredibly powerful. And it's actually one of the things that I love about Slipways, and one of the reasons why I'm so into this game right now, is because of the way that they've handled tech in this game. What a lot of games tend to do is they give you these upgrades or technologies that are incremental improvements. It makes something better by like 10% or 20% or something like that. Generally, Slipways doesn't do that. It just completely changes the rules. So, I mean, this is one that I absolutely love, the Asteroid Dwellings. What this one does is it allows you to basically turn any asteroid into a dwelling, and as long as you supply it with food, you can have colonists on there. And that basically just changes the rules of the game. And this is why the faster you start with the research points, yes, it may create some slightly tricky situations for you early on, but the benefit of having those research points, especially as you progress through the tree and some of these really powerful ones towards the end, that snowballs. I mean, if you look at this one, for example, what this basically allows you to do is use colonists as robots. And that has a huge impact. Once you get to this point and you have this huge network of planets, that is just going to completely change your options, and you're going to be leveling up planets into basically the highest levels using those technologies. And that's why you have to start early on, because as I said, it has this snowball effect of like sort of a virtuous cycle, just making it easier for you to get really high scores towards the end of the game. That's really everything from my side. I hope this video helps you. If you have any tips of your own, please do share them in the comment section. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask there as well. And as always, if you like this kind of content, do like and subscribe, and I'll see you for the next video.